She's been detained since October. My wife came here legally on humanitarian parole in 2023 from Venezuela, and she has no record. She didn't break any laws.
Back in March 2026, I visited Alligator Alcatraz, buried deep in the Everglades in Florida, and almost right away the guards turned me around. But just outside the detention center, there was a big vigil full of people protesting, including several people who have loved ones in ICE detention. This is a third of those conversations that I had with Brandon Garrison. His wife, Gabriela, is detained elsewhere in Florida, and he describes his wife's and his family's experience in what he calls immigration hell, and how he's essentially learned the law by Googling as he advocates to get Gabriela free. Now, on his TikTok, which is called Help Us Fight ICE, and I'll link it below, you'll see the videos that Gabriela and other women have smuggled out of the detention center to document their horrific conditions. It has gotten to the point that Brandon and his family are considering a move out of the country as their last legal options are exhausted. Take a listen.
She's being blanketed, like under a blanket category of an arriving alien, which essentially is subjecting her to mandatory detention. The immigration judge doesn't have jurisdiction over her case, and everybody's resorting, last resort is to file habeas corpus. And that's like anybody that's in jail or detention or prison, that's anybody's last resort to dispute their detention. We're essentially being railroaded by a Trump-appointed federal habeas corpus judge. And our judge is being called out by his colleagues, superior judges, by name. He's clearly biased, but we're essentially being forced to leave the country under voluntary departure. So I'm going to have to ask tomorrow to leave the country. They took her to multiple locations, but she essentially ended up at the prison in Baker County, which is in Jacksonville. And it's a really crappy facility. I have videos of rotten food that she sends me through the tablet. When people do habeas corpus, federal lawsuits, the sheriff at the jail gets served with a lawsuit, and they are retaliating against people that are doing habeas corpus cases. When they get served, they're putting those people in solitary confinement for months. It's really, really bad what they're doing to people. Her roommate, like I said, has been here 11 years, and she could stay in the country, but she's even asking for voluntary departure. She could essentially just sit in jail and just wait for her paperwork to go through like my wife thought we were going to be able to do. She obviously has a different judge that's not pressuring her into taking voluntary departure. But the conditions are so bad in the detention that she said, I think my wife told me on Friday that she already asked for voluntary departure.
Do you think that's the strategy of the government?
To make it too bad so that they self-deport. What ICE is doing is essentially using this categorization of an arriving alien and pretty much throwing out the window the fact that people have lived here for years. They pay taxes, they broke no laws. But because they simply get put under that categorization as an arriving alien, the immigration judge has no jurisdiction over their case. The only people that have jurisdiction is ICE, USCIS. And in most cases, they could simply just parole the person out, maybe on an ankle monitor or even house arrest, but they're not doing that. They're not exercising their discretionary ability to parole people out.
But a lot of people assume that if you play by the rules, then things will work out correctly. But It sounds like what you're describing, your wife did play by the rules. She did everything correctly.
Correct. And people always say their first thing is, well, aren't you married? Because people assume, well, you just get married and you're a citizen. It's not how it works. They have to jump through a million hoops and hurdles, and they always move the goalpost, and it's constantly changing. And I've literally am in immigration hell, literally, and I've read probably 200 opinions looking for a precedent case like my wife's, identical. Somebody that was on parole, their parole expired, and they got granted habeas, corpus relief where they could get a bond, and then their statute changes from arriving alien to 1226, which entitles everybody to a bond. We have a pending I-130. We have a pending adjustment of status, which I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars to do because I had to have a doctor go to the jail to do vaccines, to do a physical, all that stuff. It cost me like $7,000 just for that. We had it lined up to where the jail would transport her to outside medical appointments, which per their inmate handbook they can do. that she can be transported outside medical appointments per their inmate rules and handbook. We arranged all that, and it would have been a much cheaper route, but ICE stepped in last minute and prevented them, which I have everything in writing, prevented them from bringing my wife. And the sheriff agreed. We made all the appointments. Everything's on the record. And ICE said, no, if you want to do that, you got to have the doctor come to the jail. So that essentially cost me $7,000 something. In people's cases where they have, they're obviously doing everything by the book like my wife. She has a clear pathway to citizenship. Normally, the immigration judge would just give her a continuance long out in the future, so that way she can wait for the pending I-130 and adjustment of status. She would have to stay detained for all that time, which we were already prepared that she would have to stay in there for another 12 or 16 months. But now the immigration judge is forcing our hand and saying, no, we don't want to give you any more continuances. So they're going to give her a removal order. All of the money and all the stuff that I spent to adjust her status will be voided and lost and for nothing. And she'll get a 10-year bar and reentry. So because I'm being squeezed in federal court by this guy and railroaded by him, now I'm being squeezed by immigration judge. My wife's 1 year on lawful presence day is April 19th. If I don't get her out before April 19th through voluntary departure, we're going to get a 10-year ban on reentry. So we're going to have to take one on the chin and say, hey, give us the 3-year bar and reentry because it's less than a year. And then I would have to leave the country.
And you've essentially become, I don't know if you have a law background, but you've become an expert in immigration law.
I've never done anything with law, nothing. I've literally had to learn all this myself. I've literally read so many opinions and this and that. I have an attorney, but I don't, it's not that I'm not trustworthy, but I don't want to leave it up to somebody else. And I've dug in myself, hours and hours and hours. I'm on the internet. I haven't been able to sleep good for months. It definitely takes a toll on you mentally, and emotionally.
What do you think about America these days?
I'm embarrassed, I did a podcast with John Carlos Frey, an interview with him. He's a pretty important investigative journalist in regards to the immigration stuff. And, I voted for Trump in 2016 like an idiot because I'm Florida boy, I got a boat, this, that, whatever. It was kind of like the end thing to do back then. I've obviously learned my lesson. I've changed my voter status, and this immigration stuff, has really taken a toll, but it's also brought in light to my understanding and to be more advocate, to be out there. You have to have people out there. And yesterday I went to that event with Cliff Cash, and that was the first thing. I've never done anything like this, and I wish I would have known. I don't want to say that I didn't know that people were coming out here, but I've been so overloaded with trying to understand our case and how to maneuver it and this and that I didn't have the energy to come out here and do protesting and stuff, mentally either.
Do you, you described voting for Trump, and only if you're comfortable saying, but you described voting for Trump in 2016, but obviously changing your voter status these days. Do you feel like a lot of people, half the country voted, half the electorate voted for Trump a couple times?
We got conned. We got conned the first time. And I didn't vote for him, but everybody else that they got conned. And this guy's a nut job, and he's ruining our country. And I'm 37. I've lived through all of this stuff, being my age. The Bush stuff, the 9/11, the Iraq, the Afghanistan, that's never-ending bullshit. I'm so tired of our country being focused on war and warmongering other countries and being like a colonial, whatever the word is. I'm not real versed in that stuff, but being trying to be the big swinging dick, in the whole world, and the con's up, people are fucking not believing it no more.
But this guy got elected twice. Do you think that people who don't have someone detained inside the way you do is very personally impacted by these issues? Are they coming around to the way you're thinking? I mean, people in your circle.
I have a lot of friends that talk down on what I'm doing and my situation and this and that. I don't think that MAGA's minds changed. There are a lot of idiots in MAGA. A lot of people that, it doesn't affect me or this or that, whatever. They think that MAGA's gonna, Trump's gonna make them rich, this and that. Where's your $2,000 Doge check? Where's this? Where's that? These people are all fucking idiots. And if you continue to vote for Trump, you literally are an idiot. Like, seriously, it's really bad. That people are just so brain dead that they want to follow. It's like a cult. It really is.
I appreciate you. It's probably a little vulnerable to say, like...
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think about it. But before saying it, obviously, you want to be cautious. You don't want to be criticized. But at the end of the day, you can go check my voters thing. I didn't vote for him the last 2 years. So I made a mistake and I was conned the first time. I have a pretty good judgment of character and I've never been involved in politics. But this time around, I'm definitely learning a lot. And anybody that's getting conned by all this bullshit this administration's putting out, you guys literally need to read a book. Like, read the Constitution. There's so many things these people are doing. I've made shirts. I have a shirt there that says democracy lost. It has the whole admin in the back with Trump burning the Constitution. On the back it says American Revolution.
Can I show your shirt?
Yeah, definitely. If anybody would like to offer any kind of support, it would essentially go towards me having to navigate and move out of the country. I have something on the back too if you'd like.
Oh, it's the GoFundMe.
I'm not big on TikTok, but I made an account to try to share awareness, and there's so many videos and information and videos of her from the jail and all kind of stuff on there. It's Help Us Fight ICE as our TikTok.